All right, welcome back to Niners Nightly. Joining us on the UMA guest line to talk all things Niners. It's one of our favorite guys. Jordan Elliott does a bang-up job covering the Niners and has for NBC Sports Bay Area for quite a while. He's a great follow on X as well. And he's with us on the UMA guest line to talk some Niners. Jordan, how are you?
Excellent. It's a well-deserved bye week for everyone, so it's nice to have a little bit of a reset and kind of catch up to what got us to this point in the season.
Well, Niners got a win 26-8 over the Browns over the weekend. And man, I think if there was one matchup that, we should hone in on, it's Myles Garrett against Trent Williams. And, Trent Williams did a nice job. I mean, they had 14 matchups. Myles Garrett, I think, had 4 pressures, 1 sack, 36% win percentage. When you look at the fact that I think the Niners gave up 7 hits on the quarterback, the Raiders the week before had given up 20. The Niners gave up 1 sack. The Raiders the week prior had given up 10. I think overall, you got to be pretty impressed with either Purdy's ability to get rid of the ball or the Niners' plan or their line. Who do you credit for avoiding a disaster against one of the NFL's better defenses?
I think it took a village to get that one done. I think everybody contributed in a way that really makes you appreciate how much effort needs to go into game planning for a team that on the surface people look at them as a 3-8 team going into that matchup, but that defense was not the reason why. That's one of the best fronts in the NFL. Myles Garrett is creeping up into like Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor territory, in my opinion, just in terms of his physical skill set and what he's able to do as an athlete, but the production is getting there too. I would be stunned if he doesn't break the single season sack record this year. And the 1 sack he did get on Purdy was just one of the most incredible pass rushing moves I think I've ever seen. He hit Trent Williams with kind of like a hezzy step crossover, and he looked like he teleported. Like, Trent Williams is one of the most athletically gifted left tackles I've ever seen, and rarely will you ever see him get beat on pure athleticism. And Myles Garrett's step to the inside, if you blinked for half a second, you would have missed it. It's just incredible how talented he is. So I think that they did a really good job at, he did get his sack and he did have those pressures, but he wasn't able to wreck the game. And I think when you're game planning for a player of that caliber, your biggest thing is how do we prevent this one guy from being the reason we leave this game with a loss? And the 49ers were able to negate any path to Myles Garrett being the X factor that determined the outcome of the game. And I think that in itself is a huge win, but you'll take the win on the schedule as well, obviously.
What did you think of Purdy?
I've been really impressed. I thought that his willingness to live to see another down was maybe the most impressive thing about that game, and his ability to not force things. He was 16 of 29 on the day, which, on the surface, you look at that and you think, hey, that's not great. That's, he's barely completing over half of his passes. But given the conditions, given the defense they were playing, and given the way the game was unfolding, I thought that he did a really good job of just understanding that if it wasn't there for a given play, wait and live to see another down, which at times has been a bit of a struggle. There's times where I think that his aggressiveness is something that has taken this offense to another level, but there's also times where there's risk reward. And sometimes the risk is you're turning the ball over, you're putting the ball in harm's way. And I thought he just played a really smart, really clean football game. I loved the zone read call in the red zone. I think that's one of those things where we talked about previously where, as great as Mac Jones had played, Purdy's short area quickness and his mobility adds other wrinkles to this offense where you're able to call plays like that in a really big spot. That was the biggest touchdown of the game. That's really what swung it. And, the Niners got momentum that they never lost. And so, I think he's still kind of getting back into a rhythm. I think he won't ever use it as an excuse, but I think that toe is still bothering him. But I think the signs we're seeing are really encouraging. And, when we're looking at this in the bigger picture, the Niners are 4-1 in games he starts this season. And he's gone up against 2 really, really good defenses in Seattle and Cleveland, both on the road, and they won both of those games. So I think you need to be feeling pretty encouraged at this point in time going forward, where hypothetically every week that he's removed from that injury, as he's getting back into the groove of things, you'd like to think that he's only going to get better from here. But what we've seen in these first 3 games back has been very encouraging. Minus, there's a couple throws in the Carolina game. I understand people were kind of panicking, but he finished that game 23 of 32, and he played a clean second half, and they won the game. And as you know, Larry, in this league, you don't get caught up in what happened a couple of weeks ago. If you got the win, you move on, you watch the film, you improve. And I think that they did a really good job bouncing back and against a good defense in Cleveland.
I asked Shanahan, I said, I thought this was one of Brock's better performances as a Niner. What'd you think? And he's like, no, I don't think so. I mean, he played really well, but he's also had some other incredible performances. But I just think, yeah, you could look at the low yards per attempt and you could look at the 53% completion percentage. But when you factor in those conditions, Myles Garrett, the scald that he was on coming into that game, 14 sacks in the previous 5 games. The number 2 pass defense in football. You still don't have Ayuk, and to allow 1 sack. He sprinted away from a number of sacks, to take care of the football, to play winning football, no mistakes. I thought it was one of his best performances. And then we had Kyle Posey on the show last night. Posey had a great stat yesterday on 3rd and 5s or longer. Brock Purdy against the Browns on Sunday went 6 of 8, with 5 of the passes resulting in a first down, 1 resulting in a touchdown. And this was a windy game on the road against the number 2 pass defense. So I thought it was one of Purdy's better performances. And to me, the thing that was exciting was that second play when Isaiah McGuire got penetration, and we saw Brock identify him late and then still have the juice to sprint away from him. To me, I know the toe was probably not 100%, but at least he still has the ability to do that. And if he can do that, he can protect himself. If he can protect himself, I think he can win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, 3rd down has been so critical all year for the Niners. When they got off to their hot start, even when Mac Jones was playing, they were one of the better 3rd down offenses in football. And the Browns were only allowing opponents to convert 34% of their 3rd downs coming into that game. And the Niners converted 65% of them. Like, that is going to win you football games in the NFL. And I think that, like you said, it was one of those instances where he was able to do it in a multitude of ways. He was able to extend plays with his legs. He was able to, mentally break down what he was seeing on the field in real time and dissect a really good defense. I thought he made a couple really big time throws in that game too. And I just think that it's one of those games where when you're playing on the road, in a cold weather game, as we're entering December here, like, those are the kind of gritty wins that really give you belief that you are a team that can hang with the elite contenders, even though you are riddled with injuries and you've had to deal with all this adversity. Like, I don't think there's anybody in that locker room that doesn't think they can beat any team in this league on any given Sunday. And sometimes, even though, again, the Browns don't have the best record, I understand they've dealt with some struggles of their own. That's still a really, really good quality win. And I think that's the kind of win that propels you going forward as we enter the last month of the season here.
Niners enter the bye week 9-4, and the playoffs are they're closer to the top seed than they are to missing the playoffs. How do you see the 49ers as far as the defense and special teams going into the bye? It seems like the special teams unit is on the uptick, and I don't know what to say about the defense. I mean, it's really pretty miraculous what Robert Saleh has been able to do without Bosa, without Warner, without McKell. They continue to chug along. Give me your thoughts on the special teams and the defense.
Well, I think that Sky Moore has definitely already made himself worth the assets they gave up to acquire him. I think his impact as a returner can't be understated. And I think that it's giving them a little bit extra juice knowing they have a guy that can potentially take a punt or a kickback. And I think that is adding a little bit more stress on opponents. I think having kickers in this instance, since they've gone through a couple this year, both have given you confidence that when the guy goes out there, he's going to make kicks. As we know, that was an issue before. And I just think that it went from an area of glaring weakness, which it was stunning for years when this team was such a loaded roster and they were making NFC Championship games every year and they were in the Super Bowl a couple times. Like, special teams was such a glaring weakness year in and year out. And it feels like they've really corrected it. So it's gone from an area you were trying to just maybe scrape by and maybe get back to league average and hope things can, revert to the mean, to now it's like, no, this is a genuine strength of this football team. Like, they are dangerous in all 3 phases now. As for the defense, I don't know what else you can say about Robert Saleh at this point. They've allowed 17 points combined over the last 2 games. And that Panthers game, people tried to downplay it and say that they weren't a very good team. Well, they just went out and they beat one of the best teams in football a week later in the Rams, and they put up over 30 points in that game. So I do think that that entire defense deserves its flowers for the way they're playing. And I think a lot of it does start up front. I think that D-line looks a little bit more revamped the last couple of weeks. I think the Keon White trade is going to go down as one of the more underrated moves league-wide this season, regardless of how the 49ers season plays out. He had 4 pressures, a couple hits, and a sack in that game in Cleveland, and he's just extremely dynamic. You can line him up anywhere in that front. He's comfortable rushing as a 3-tech. You could kick him out wide as a 9-tech if you wanted. He can kick inside and play 0 if you need it. Like, the guy can really get after the quarterback from anywhere, and I just think that having that kind of dynamic chess piece opens things up for other guys. And now we're seeing guys like Cleveland Ferrell and some of these other players that are having to step up with Bosa out benefit from having a little bit more juice up front. So I think that it's a unit that maybe isn't going to dominate and win games by themselves against elite opponents, but it will give the offense a shot against elite opponents. And I think they'll be able to keep them in games. And as this offense is getting healthy, you start mapping out a path to a reasonable line of thought where you can believe the 49ers can go up against anybody on any given game and have a fighting chance, which I don't think anybody would have felt that way confidently a couple weeks ago. And I think now we're at a spot where this team can win games, not only going into the playoffs, but they could win a couple playoff games.
I agree. You know, and Keon White, let's talk about him for a second, because, I mean, talk about a great addition. This guy's not old. He's not expensive. It didn't cost much, and he's not a bad attitude. He's not one of these guys that's, you know, a police blotter guy. He simply just was not a scheme fit as a 3-4 outside linebacker. He's not a stand-up rusher in a 3-4 defense, and he's not a 2-gapper. And that's what the Pats were looking for on their front. The Niners are looking for 1-gap penetrators who are versatile, can play inside or outside. And he fits the Niners scheme perfectly. And I asked him about it at his locker, and he said, you know, it just feels so good to be able to contribute and be in a scheme that really suits my skills and that I can contribute to. And he was really fired up. He's been outstanding. I mean, he's really been outstanding, and he's just a much better scheme fit here. So I thought the price tag was right. I thought the fit was perfect. But Lynch was on this morning on KMBR, and he was talking up Alfred Collins. He says, what I can tell you is that I think we're going to have a really, really high-end player for a long time in the middle of the D-line. He's playing at a really high level right now. You watch that film and roll it back and forth. We've seen more run for CJ West in recent weeks, and we've also seen Collins, you know, get steady run really throughout the year when he's been healthy. What do the young interior players look like to you on film?
I think that there's a tremendously high ceiling with Collins because he's one of those athletes that has just incredible size. He's a massive dude, and he moves laterally with an agility that is very rare for somebody at that size. And I do think that gives them so much flexibility up front when you have a guy that can cover multiple gaps like that and is able to get side to side really quickly, especially when you are going up against a front that's going to stretch you out horizontally as much as they're just trying to run the ball right at you with power or gap scheme and stuff like that. And I feel like it was one of those things where they went into that draft knowing, like, look, we got ran over all year last year. It was very clear there was an issue stopping the run last year, and they were not going to let that be a problem in back-to-back years. And I think they did a tremendous job, not only getting Collins in the second, but adding another guy in CJ West that could come in and contribute on day 2. And I think that it really invites a lot of optimism going forward, because as we saw in years past, when that D-line was at their best, they were able to stop the run on early downs. And then when you get into 3rd and 7 and 3rd and 8, and you have a healthy Nick Bosa, you have a guy like a Bryce Huff, you have a Michael Williams back from injury and healthy next season. Like, you start getting into this mold where you're repeating the recipe that led you to so much success, which was having a dynamic pass rush and forcing teams to throw in 3rd and long over and over and over again. And when you have that much talent up front, the odds are going to be in your favor, where you're probably going to win more often than the offense you're facing when you're repeatedly putting them in these positions. But it all starts on the early downs. If you can't stop the run, it doesn't matter how much talent you have, because when you're sitting in 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 3, these guys aren't going to be able to pin their ears back and get after them, especially under Kocurek, where they're really just aggressive and just going at full speed on those passing downs. And so I think it really has changed the entire dynamic of this defense. And the encouraging thing is that these guys aren't anywhere near their best yet, and they're already playing at a really high level. And there's going to be so much room for them to get better, to end this season, go into next. And you have these guys on cost-controlled rookie deals for the next few years too. So you're getting these really dynamic pieces that are going to contribute at a high level, and you're getting it at a bargain rate, which will allow you to then spend and fill out the rest of that defense and keep them feasibly in contention for years to come.
You know, Steve Young was on Dan Patrick today, and they were talking about different, you know, he's asked him, hey, what do you think of your Niners? And he brought up the coaching staff. And, you know, it's funny. I just talked about this earlier today about, you know, if you really look at this Niner coaching staff, I mean, they've had good coaches throughout this regime for sure. But I kind of think this is the best top to bottom coaching staff they've had. I mean, you've got Shanahan, I think, has been humbled to some degree by losing the Super Bowl, and you got a very driven, focused Shanahan. You have Robert Saleh, who's got the bounce back from being the head coach of the Jets. I mean, just from having lived that experience and dealing with the media, you can tell he's appreciative of where he's at, and he's just more skilled across the board. Then you bring in Gus Bradley, you add Brant Boyer, and I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, this is. Since Lynch and Shanahan got here in 2017, I think top to bottom, this is the best coaching staff they've had. What do you think?
I think that one of Kyle Shanahan's most underrated traits as a head coach that gets overlooked is his ability to fill out a staff. And I think that it's something that they've had for years where they've not only had really talented coordinators, but the position coaches have also been really talented. And I think that it's been evident that the league feels that way too, with how many guys have left and gotten promotions elsewhere, or got promoted to head coaching roles elsewhere. I do agree. I think that it's hard to pick just one year, because I do think there were years past where they were really stacked too. I think some of those years where they had D'Amico and Mike McDaniel together, that was really good. But the guys who have been there really for the long haul, the Johnny Hollands, the Bobby Turners, Leonard Hankerson's been great with those receivers for a couple of years. Brian Fleury with the tight ends. Like, I think a lot of those guys that fly under the radar at the position coach level have just been exceptional for years. So I think adding in those pieces you mentioned to the guys who have already kind of been there and have been established have allowed them to maintain a level of excellence where, you know, when we're having casual discourse as sports fans, a lot of times it's like all on the head coach. But as you know, Larry, like, there are so many moving parts to keeping a football team going. And I think so many of these guys that aren't going to be in the limelight getting a lot of attention have been so good for so long that it's been a big reason the 49ers have been a contender for years. It's been a big reason why there's an established culture that all these players talk about. There's a standard of excellence that's maintained. And that's happening when you're in these meeting rooms for 5-6 hours a day with your position coach, with your offensive coordinator, with your quality control guys. Like, I just think from top to bottom, they've established such a high level of talent, but also like a love for football. And I think that's so important. And I think that's what really rubs off on these players. Like, these are guys that are going to go in and put in the just absurd hours it takes day in and day out. You know, fans see the 3 hours on Sunday, but they don't see the 12 hours on a Wednesday. And I just think that this coaching staff really embodies the roster in the sense that there's a sense of community and there's a sense of passion in chasing that elusive six Lombardi that it trickles from top to bottom. So I wouldn't disagree with it. I think it'd be hard for me to definitively say this is the best coaching staff they've had, but I think that the level of excellence they've maintained year in and year out with a lot of those names you mentioned, I wouldn't disagree with you if you felt that way.
Let's try to tackle the Ayuk thing for a second here. And I'm trying to put my arms around this thing. I'm so utterly confused. Maybe you could provide some insights. I mean, Niners are at the week 14 bye, right? But there's also kind of this little, conversation on the side about what's Brandon Ayuk's status for the rest of the season and beyond. I mean, the Niners took away all the guaranteed money. You would think that would have just been a precursor to an obvious divorce, and that was how it was originally reported. But Shanahan and Lynch have sounded very open-minded to Ayuk returning. And now the question is he going to return? I mean, Shanahan did say this week that nobody's practice window would be open. And, that means there's 4 more weeks for Ayuk to potentially return to practice and potentially play in a regular season game. We don't know. He hasn't been cleared yet. He tore the ACL. He tore the MCL. He tore the meniscus back in week 7 last year. And now the question is, what are the Niners going to do? They're 9-4. They're in the midst of a playoff push. He definitely, if he came back and could play the way he's played, could help them significantly. But you could also argue that it could be a gigantic distraction and could sidetrack the Niners and maybe even hurt their chances. What's your guess? I mean, do you think he's never going to play for the Niners again? He's going to be traded? There's people speculating that the Niners will trade him and Mac Jones for Justin Jefferson in the offseason. Man, that would be a nice deal. But what's your guess? I mean, this seems there's so many moving parts here. It just seems it's like one of the most bizarre stories. Do they want him? Do they not want him? Is he happy? Is he not happy? What is your read on Ayuk and what, if any, impact he may make between now and the end of the year?
Well, first of all, I agree 100%. This is one of the weirdest things I've seen in any sport, especially for a player of that caliber to sign that kind of contract, to then have their guarantees voided, and then for it to fly under the radar for as long as it did before it became widely reported. I can't recall ever seeing anything like this. So this entire situation is extremely difficult to get a grasp on because we don't really have any past precedent that we can rely on or compare it to. I would be stunned if he plays for the 49ers this season, especially without those guarantees. I think for a player even playing at full level of health, I think it would be extremely risky on their part to go out and play such a dangerous game without the cushion of having guaranteed money if they were to get hurt. I just can't envision a scenario where, coming off of those injuries, he hasn't played at game speed yet. He hasn't been practicing during team drills with the team. He hasn't been doing all of the things you need to do to get into football shape. He obviously didn't get training camp. He didn't get a preseason. So I think to just go from where he's been at to playing, and then playing in December and January games, and probably playoff games too, I just don't think that there's any scenario where he will end up doing that, because I think it puts far too much risk on his plate. I don't know if there's a way. Admittedly, I'm not an expert when it comes to contract language and these sort of things. So I don't know if there's a way that they can guarantee some sort of money, or if there's some sort of insurance or something that is worked into that language that would give him some sort of cushion if he were to come back and get hurt again. Because I just don't think that there's a world that exists where a player in this situation with the team like this, where, like you said, it looks very clear like it's headed for divorce. I just don't see, from the player's perspective, why they would risk their own health at this point to come back and play a couple games. I agree 1,000% that if you're the 49ers, you absolutely want him back. Brandon Ayuk was a second-team All-Pro receiver a couple years ago, had an incredible 2023 where he was one of the most efficient receivers in the league. He's averaging 17 yards a catch. We obviously know the way he opens up things for everybody else. He's a guy that can win against man coverage, against elite corners. I'm sure Brock Purdy would love to have him back, but at this point, I just don't think that it's feasible. And I just don't see a scenario where, unless there's a complete 180, Larry, and they're somehow able to work things out and they, kind of bury the hatchet and move on, I just don't see how a guy can come back. And I know some people have said, well, if he doesn't play, then how's he going to show to other teams that he's valuable? I don't think him coming back and playing a couple games where he's working back up to game speed and not really all the way back is going to move the needle either way. I think this is pretty much set in stone, and I would be stunned if he wasn't playing for the Washington Commanders in the near future with his friend Jaden Daniels. That to me seems like where this is headed in the long run. I don't know if that's going to be via trade or if the Niners are going to end up having to waive him, but I just don't see him suiting up for the Niners again, realistically.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. That puts more pressure on Ricky Pearsall to produce. Let's talk about Pearsall for a second. Week 1 against Seattle, 7 targets, 4 catches, 108 yards. He looked great. I don't think anybody wonders if he's a good player. It's just a matter of where is he and why is he not contributing? Week 3, and this was Mac Jones at quarterback against Arizona. Mac targeted him 11 times. He caught 8 balls for 117 yards. But here we are. He came back. So then he played against Jacksonville, got hurt. And in that game, he was targeted 5 times, caught 4 balls for 46 yards. So he was out from late September through the middle of November. But then he came back against Arizona, but he only had 1 catch for no yards. Then he played against Carolina. He had 2 catches for 6 yards. Then he played last week against the Browns. He had 2 catches for 14 yards. So he's played 3 games since coming back. He's got 5 receptions for 20 yards. He still has no touchdowns. What do you make of his production or lack thereof? I mean, is it he's open and it's on the quarterbacks? Is it that what I see is that it just doesn't seem like he's open early enough in the progression? Like he's not beating his guy at the line. And when they first look at him, he's not open. He might be open later in the down or later down the field, but I don't see him open right away at the line. And that's not like, I haven't looked at every route, but those are just a couple games that I saw where it looked like, Brock looked at him, but he wasn't there. It wasn't available. And then all of a sudden, he the ball doesn't find him. I mean, what do you make? He's got 25 catches on the year for 347 yards and no touchdowns. He was their first-round pick. I mean, I think there's expectation that, especially with no Ayuk, that he was going to step up and be a significant player this year. And it looked good early, but it hasn't happened. What's derailed him?
I do wonder how much of this is like a chemistry thing, because I do think that Pearsall is to me is a more dynamic player than someone like, say, Juwan Jennings. But I think that Juwan Jennings has more of a rapport with Purdy. And I think he's also a guy that's proven third down, the red zone, in really big spots. He's somebody that you can rely on. So like when we go to this game against the Browns, the guys who are getting more targets than Pearsall are, George Kittle, Juwan Jennings, McCaffrey. And I think that, it doesn't seem like it's a talent issue for me. Like, I don't think that he's like, regressed or anything. I don't think that it's like, oh, he was getting open so much early in the season and now all of a sudden he isn't. I just wonder if it is just, a combination of kind of a hierarchy thing where, all due respect to Ricky Pearsall, I think he's a very good football player. Like, if you can get the ball to George Kittle more often than Ricky Pearsall, like, you're probably going to. I think that Juwan Jennings, especially with Ayuk out, might be Brock Purdy's favorite target. I think that they just have a seamless connection between the two. So it doesn't surprise me when he's maybe getting fed the ball a little bit more. I think the other thing is that the other receivers kind of below Kittle and Jennings in this pecking order, like Demarcus Robinson and Bourne only got one target apiece too. So it's like, I do wonder if it's just kind of like a game plan thing the last couple of weeks. But at the same time, when you're taken in the first round, there's going to be an expectation that you're going to put up numbers. And when you put up numbers early in a season, you get hurt for a little bit and you come back and those numbers and that production aren't there. I think it's only natural for people to kind of question, like, what's going on? Like, what changed? What happened? Is he fully healthy? Is it, is there something else going on that we're not, aware of on the surface? But I still think he's a very talented player. And I do think he is the kind of player that can win against man coverage and can win against press and can do some of these things. I just, like you said, I don't think we're seeing it as maybe consistently as we did at the beginning of the season. So if we get a few more games in and he's still at this level, then that's when I'd probably be a little bit more concerned. I do think, like his last 3 games, as you mentioned, 20 receiving yards across 3 games that's not the production you're looking for with a player that you invested that kind of capital in. But I don't think that it's something that we can pin on him and say he's not getting open, he's not doing what's asked of him. I think he has been doing enough to get the ball more, but for whatever reason, it's just not happening. So I wouldn't squarely place the blame on him, but I do think it's worth being concerned about and monitoring, if that makes sense.
We're at the bye week. The number 1 seeds in each conference are New England and Chicago. And it's not, I don't know if it should be lost on anybody. Those were the 2 top, the top, coaching candidates in the offseason. A lot of people wanted Vrabel. A lot of people wanted Ben Johnson. The Raiders badly wanted Ben Johnson, according to reports this week. And now you got the Chicago Bears with Ben Johnson. They've won, 9 of 10. They're getting some amazing performances. Kyle Monangi's playing great. Nashawn Wright, who went to Laney College, played for John Beam, is having an amazing year. I mean, the Bears lead the NFL in takeaways with 26, and Nashawn Wright's got 5 interceptions. I mean, he has been fantastic, including a pick 6. He's also got 3 fumble recoveries and a forced fumble. I mean, that guy's just absolutely playing incredible. But who do you believe in more? Who's more of a legitimate Super Bowl contender in your mind? The 9-3 Bears, who are the number 1 seed in the NFC, or the Pats, who have won 10 in a row? I mean, that's unbelievable. And Drake May be the MVP of the league. I mean, who's more important, more impressive, I should say, Vrabel's Pats or Ben Johnson's Bears?
I feel like I'm going to go with the Bears because I did not expect the Bears to be turned around this quickly. I thought it would be kind of a multi-year project. I thought it would be something where there would be a little bit of a adjustment as, you know, you're getting a new head coach and you're implementing scheme, and Caleb Williams is kind of finding his footing. But I did not expect that defense to be as good as they've been. And I think that while there's some variance and luck that go into turnovers when you're getting and creating turnovers at that rate, it can't just be chalked up as chance or coincidence. Like, there's something that you're doing really well that's going to continue to lead to that. And, you know, the Bears are doing it in a tough division, in a tough conference. I think that if we're comparing schedules, I'd be more impressed by the wins that the Bears have put on their schedule than the Patriots. I think Drake May's a fantastic quarterback. I think what they've been doing has been incredible. But I also just think that if we're really comparing them and going down the line and looking at the situations both teams had and the competition they've faced, the Bears are the 1 seed in the NFC, and I think they're playing in the toughest division in football. And I would be hard pressed to find anybody maybe outside of Chicago or anybody who wasn't a Bears fan that felt that the team would be this good this fast. And I think the surprise of it all is what makes it more impressive to me.
Last one. We appreciate you jumping on KMBR. If I said to you, you know, the MVP for the 49ers going into the bye week, you know, is it obvious? Is it just Christian McCaffrey and only Christian McCaffrey? And also, I got to kind of get your thoughts on Burford stepping in full time for Barch. You know, Barch is now out for the year. I kind of felt like Burford, you know, really start opening some lanes for McCaffrey and looks really strong. But what do you think? Who's your team MVP? And give me a quick thought on your confidence level in Burford to man that guard spot the rest of the way by himself.
Yeah, I wish I could give you, you know, an unsung hero or somebody else to plug in to give them some shine, but it's Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is having just an all-time season. He's having one of those seasons that, you know, it's a throwback back to when guys were getting 400, 450 touches a year. And it's just absolutely incredible that he's not only been able to handle this workload and pretty much carry the offense on its back with multiple starting quarterbacks, with Pearsall missing time, with Ayuk being out all season, with Kittle missing time. He's been the one constant for them. And just week after week, no matter how much volume he's getting, no matter what opponent they're facing, he's consistently putting up numbers. And he's doing it coming off of a season where he had a really, really tough injury last year. That bilateral Achilles tendonitis is no joke. And this guy came back a year later and is touching the ball more than anybody and scoring touchdowns every week. And he's up there on lists with the best receivers in the league for his receiving production while also running the ball 20, 25 times a game. So to me, it's Christian McCaffrey. He deserves every bit of praise coming his way. And he honestly deserves some Offensive Player of the Year shine, and dare I say even MVP votes for the NFL MVP, not just the 49ers MVP, for the way he's played this year. And then for Burford, I've been pretty adamant about it. I've tweeted about it a few times. I'm pretty vocal about it. I personally think that Spencer Burford is a better option at left guard than Ben Barch when both were healthy. I thought that he should have been the guy from day one. I don't know if the 49ers saw more value in just having him readily available as a swing tackle, because that's also an extremely, extremely important position. But to me, he's a better athlete. I think that he gets out into space a little bit better. I think he gets to the second level a little bit better. And I think that he's just more comfortable on that left side too. I think that they had him on the right side for a long time after he played left tackle at UTSA. And I think that it was a really tough adjustment for him. And I know I talked to him last season in the locker room after they beat the Jets on Monday Night Football when he stepped in and played left guard. And he was not shy at all about talking about how much more comfortable he felt playing on the left side and how it just felt natural to him. And it just felt like all of those years and all of those reps when he was on the left side, like there's a muscle memory that gets built in. And I think oftentimes, Larry, people think that you can just, you know, kind of move guys around the offensive line. If they're a good enough player, they'll figure it out. Even the highest level players are going to have some level of comfort playing on one side or the other. And I think that Burford is back in a place where some of that muscle memory and those years and years of reps are allowing him to play with a lot more confidence than we saw in some of those seasons where he was on the right side. So I think the combination of that and then also playing next to Trent Williams, I think is going to make anybody look better. But there's been some plays the last few weeks where you see Trent and you see Spencer Burford getting out in space and they're wrecking shop at the second level. They are just, like you said, they're creating 4 or 5 lane highways for Christian McCaffrey to run through. And I think that he has a really big opportunity the next few weeks to solidify that he's a guy that should be, in my opinion, retained and kept as the starting left guard heading into next season and the years to come.
He's a great follow on X. Splash at /cousin. Jordan Elliott does a fantastic job for NBC Sports Bay Area. Jordan, thanks for jumping on KMBR and talking a little Niners with us.
Thank you, Larry. Always a pleasure.
We'll continue more Niners Nightly next. We'll have our 49ers stat of the day as we continue on the Sports Leader.